Thank you all. Sorry, I know we're obviously running a bit behind schedule, so thanks for hanging on and sort of waiting for this. We're not going to spend too much time. We're not going to spend too much time on introductions. We're just going to sort of jump right in. We have a few minutes, and we'll try and make the most of it. For those of you who've been following the whole India story, there was a lot of activity last year. There's been a bit of a slowdown this year. So I'm going to just start off by asking the panel to chat a bit about their opinion about what happened, and more importantly, what should an entrepreneur sort of take from that. Kanwal, if you'd like to start.
It appears that India's time has come, right? We have seen now the e-towers, unicorns in India and all that. I have been engaged with the Indian, startup scene since 1999, and we did that. The original VC fund, Infinity Capital, with Saurabh and all those guys back then. Islam ways. Indian entrepreneurs have started to mature. Environment is still immature, but starting to mature, starting to become very real. And the policy framework is starting to improve. I think, from our perspective, we still have some issues with respect to going through Mauritius and all that. But by and large, we are starting to see deals and entrepreneurs which are starting to look very, very attractive.
Yeah, so from my perspective, India has evolved quite a bit. I started investing in India in 2006, and about 2006 to 2011, we saw a lot of people investing in growth companies, in different kind of companies. But I think starting around the end of 2010, early 2011, we started seeing the quality of early stage entrepreneurs really, really improving. We see disruption not just in technology-enabled companies. We see disruption in basic industries, financial services, healthcare, education, even consumer non-tech. In fact, some of our consumer non-tech companies are some of the fastest growing companies in terms of overall year to year. I think what Dinesh is also referring to is that we saw some highs and lows this past year. But I think to me, in my mind, they were sector specific. Sins were committed by both investors and entrepreneurs. But the one thing that we're looking and we're hoping to see, and we're beginning to see the early signs of it, is a return back to unit economics, which has been missing for the past year.
Right. So Anis, you have a very unique sort of perspective on this. You've been investing in that whole geography except India, and this year you're now actually starting to get involved there. So would love your thoughts.
So I'm Anis Uzman, and I run a fund here in Silicon Valley. So we mainly invest in Silicon Valley, but we are also investing into a lot of Asian countries. So for the last 3-4 years, we have invested heavily in countries like Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand. Even recently, we invested in countries like Bangladesh. So for us, India is a new region, and we are very interested in this. We just onboarded the Thai Silicon Valley chairman, Venk Shukla, as one of our general partners. And we are looking India in a very positive way. When we went to Indonesia like 2 years ago, and we have invested in 16 different companies in Indonesia now, I mean, the things that we looked into is the population, GDP growth rate, the internet penetration rate, and obviously the growth of the overall country. I mean, you're seeing the same thing for India. I know that there is a lot of negativity going around in the news, but we do not care in some sense, because you cannot just ignore the population. It's 1.2 billion people, which is 4 times large than the demographics you're seeing in this country. There are 350 million people using internet. I mean, you cannot just ignore that. So everything offline is going to go online. And we feel that we are ready as Finox to take India as our 15th destination where we want to invest in. And we are going to open up a dedicated fund just for India very soon.
So if you're entrepreneurs, I guess the bottom line is don't panic. There's lots of opportunity. One of the favorite questions entrepreneurs always have is, what are the areas that you're the most bullish about? Again, I mean, Anis, I think you're just entering, but again, if within that sort of broad thesis, are there areas that you believe in?
So maybe I'll start. So we have been very broad investors. We have stayed away from capital-intensive companies because we are smallish fund. We like the capital-efficient companies. We love marketplaces. We love marketplaces, not the inventory carrying marketplaces, but Redbus was one of the companies that we invested in early on. We also like the companies out of India which are doing SaaS software for the world markets. We have several of those now. They started in India, do the software, they perfect their software in India and come to US, come to Southeast Asia, come to Middle East, and we have about half a dozen of those companies. So we love SaaS, we love marketplaces, and then we are very opportunistic also. We are not 100% focused on a given sector, and we have companies in the healthcare, we have companies in the education space. Maybe I should talk about this one company. We have this one company in Delhi, which is selling to the SMEs, kind of a marketplace, but very different type of marketplace. They are the people in the middle of large suppliers like steel mills and plastic manufacturers and newsprint, and selling to the small SMEs. SME wants to buy 50 tons of steel. The mill wants to sell you 10,000 tons of steel. And so typically this has been in the past as a wholesaler, retailer, kind of market. Somebody in the middle charging 20-30%. So these guys have automated that process through an app, where they aggregate demand from these guys and place a large order. They don't take the ownership, but they ship to these SMEs directly. It's been the fastest growing company in our arsenal. We invested in that 2-3 years ago. They are growing 25 to 30% month on month. I mean, in the month of March, they did 50 crores of revenue. They had done only 30 crores of revenue a couple of months earlier, and he thinks he'll do 100 crores of revenue in another 2 to 3 months. So one of the fastest growing company, and it's sort of lower technology. It does have a technology to match the buyers and sellers, but the main job is to use the technology to disintermediate the wholesaler in the middle who was charging 25-30% of premium. We can charge, make money at 5 or 6%. So lots of stuff we love. Where technology-enabled, technology-powered stuff is disintermediating people in the middle.
So from our perspective, we tend to be very opportunistic and contrarian investors. So we try to see what's, in our opinion, what's coming up next 3 to 5 years and try to follow a thesis beyond that. So if you look at our Fund 1, we had a lot of IT-enabled services companies. Fund 2, we did e-commerce very early. We did e-commerce in 11 and 12. We didn't do much after that. Fund 3, which we're investing right now, there's a theme of a lot of fintech in there, a lot of SaaS in there. And the one thing that's been common to all our funds has been consumer non-tech. We have been able to get into companies like Sula Wines, created companies like Chai Point. And again, these companies are growing 30 to 40% year over year. And interestingly, tend to be very attractive to global acquirers who are realizing that coming into India and starting organically is not going to work. But at the end of the day, I think we have to look for certain sectors that we believe in. But it's a starting point. I think good entrepreneurs will always figure out, if you bet on the entrepreneurs, they'll figure out when and how they should pivot. In fact, some of our most successful companies have pivoted. I mean, Snapdeal was a Groupon model, pivoted into a marketplace. Paytm, we actually invested in a company called 197, which was a mobile VAS company, and converted into a wallet company. So at the end of the day, the thesis is back good entrepreneurs in spaces you believe in today, but be open that good entrepreneurs will figure out when and how to pivot, and our job is to kind of figure out how we continue supporting them. But the thing in India is, at the end of the day, is that there are two phenomena happening. One is on the tech side. I think I agree with Kanwal on SaaS. This is, I think, the first time that we have an opportunity to leverage India's base and really go after global markets. And I think we're finding that, we just recently did a deal with Excel called Jiffle now. We've done a deal with Kanwal called Move and Sync. And these companies are able to, really leverage their base and go after different markets. And on the consumer non-tech side, the Indian consumer today is much more aspirational, much more global, wants a better quality product delivered professionally, but at an affordable price point. If you can get that right, demand is endless. And scale in India is easy for those kind of companies. So again, we are very broad, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that the opportunities across the board in India and not just purely tech.
So on our side, I mean, we will follow a similar strategy that we follow on the US side, and people might think that I'm demanding. So on the US side, our current goal is to get into all the best of the best artificial intelligence technology. So artificial intelligence, robotics, augmented reality, big data, and IoT should be our focus areas. And we demand that from the Indian entrepreneurs as well. Now, many people might say that it's an early stage of startups, and we'll see more consumer plays. But I think India has the best of the best technology institutes and universities from around the world. On the US side, we have invested in companies, robotics companies like Jibo. I think you have heard about this MIT hotshot personal robot. We are the lead investor into Jibo. We also invested in another MIT hotshot artificial intelligence company recently called Affectiva. These are some of the level of companies we're investing on the US side, and we are looking into the similar markets in India. And trust me, I mean, we have been already talking to some of the Indian startups who are able to deliver and match the similar level of technology that the US or MIT or Carnegie Mellon-based startups are providing. So I'm very hopeful and optimistic, but we'll take a deeper approach onto the technology side rather than the consumer side for our side.
Excellent. So one of the things we touched upon and probably is of more interest to the audience here, the creation of global companies out of India. Right, we've certainly seen that trend. I would love any thoughts in terms of where do we see advantages in creating a global company out of India, and if you want to look at sort of the B2B versus B2C side separately.
If you talk to our investors, the LPs, they have very little interest in that. They are very little interested in creating the global companies out of India. They want us to bet on the India consumption story. India's large middle class emerging, 250 million people on the smartphones, growing at the rate of 40% year on year, and they want us to focus on their needs rather than Indian entrepreneurs. They think Indian entrepreneurs competing on the world stage is not a winning formula yet. But in spite of that, we have companies we are betting on. We have this young entrepreneur, company called Unboxed. 26-year-old entrepreneur, sitting in Bangalore. He did some software to enhance the e-commerce sites, and he's starting to sell in the U.S. And he sold to Target, and then he sold to Bed Bath & Beyond, then he sold to CVS, and all of a sudden his business, which started in India, is shifting to U.S. almost 100%, and he's growing, doubling, tripling every 4, 5, 6 months. So we, but this fits our, the SaaS software out of India into U.S. market. But by and large, our LPs strongly discourage us to back entrepreneurs who are not playing the India consumption story. They think that opportunity is like China's opportunity was before, and you can build large companies out of that one. And I don't know, you have a different experience.
No, I think, same page. I think except for SaaS, we actually discourage our companies from going global too early because the markets in India are so big, so huge that we kind of say, own this market, there's so much here. And as I said earlier, if you've got a good product or a good service, you deliver it professionally, you make it affordable, the growth potential in India is extremely large, whether you're B2B or B2C, but SaaS, because the client base is outside the country. But there'll also be good SaaS companies built in India, so it's not like it won't happen. But when we look at the market, I think companies eventually will go global, but the domestic market is so huge. And as I said, the Indian consumer consumption story, purchasing power going up, all those metrics really make us believe that you got to be successful in India if you've got a good product. Now, also, if companies do go global, as I said, and I put SaaS aside now, we already established they have to go after a global market. The most natural markets for companies from India to go into is we're seeing a lot of Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia. It's not really always the US that's the best market to expand to. So, again, I think the opportunity is limitless. I think several of us in India, the venture side, have bet on the India story. And when you bet on the India story, you're betting on the demographics, the population, the consumption opportunity, and we have still so much room to go.
So Anis, have you seen global companies out of the other markets that you've been involved in?
So it's a very good point, and like whether the Indian company should come out and be a global company from get-go. So from my experience, I have also been investing heavily in Japan, for example, and I have seen most of the companies are becoming winners in the country first before they are looking outside. I have invested in 10 different companies in Japan. 3 of them went IPO, and after IPO, they have called me and said like, "Hey, I want to try Nasdaq next. What should I do next?" And like this is the story I'm hearing, and they already have $30+ million in revenue every year. So I believe that for India, it applies the same way, that they have a big enough demographics to have a good business first. Once they're successful in India, then I think they can look forward and go global.
All right. So, all of you have had experiences working closely with entrepreneurs, not just in the Indian context, but here, many of you have been entrepreneurs as well. What have you seen are perhaps the top areas of improvement where you feel like there is Indian startups still have some work to do?
Like I said earlier, the Indian environment is very fluid and changing very rapidly. So we had the Indian entrepreneurs at one time who were not ambitious enough, but I think we have Indian entrepreneurs now who are over-ambitious. And one of the problems in India is that we still need to tamp down the entrepreneurs' excitement. Some of them feel that once they got funded, they have arrived, right? And I tell people, heads down attitude. So we spend a huge amount of time mentoring entrepreneurs to make sure they are focused on the right things, and they focus on the unit economics. We absolutely would not participate in any company where I don't see improving unit economics. So our companies in India have stayed very, very focused on how do we become a viable company rather than a large company, large money-losing company. So there's a huge opportunity in India to educate entrepreneurs. We are here to not raise money, but to build viable, strong, profitable companies. And that's a challenge sometimes because we have competition which is funding companies which are losing tons of money. But we have stayed pretty disciplined through the process. And I would much rather have a smaller, profitable company than a company losing tons of cash. And it's a challenge.
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. I think, from my perspective, if the companies are SaaS companies going after global markets, I think really understanding better who they're selling to, what they're selling, and what the value proposition is, really articulating that much better. But in terms of domestic India, Kanwal already touched on unit economics, but I'll tell you one of my pet peeves, and I think this came up in a conversation recently that Kanwal was part of, is that when entrepreneurs are trying to get liquidity too soon in their Series A's and Series B's, and taking that money and becoming angel investors, I think if you look at the Valley, what has made the best entrepreneurs is pure focus on making their company successful. They don't get distracted. They become angel investors after they've achieved success and after they've sold their company and gotten liquidity in a proper manner. But using liquidity from venture capital and private equity to go become angel investors is one of my pet peeves. Others might not agree, but it really bothers me.
Maybe I should add a point. These immature entrepreneurs who haven't done a full cycle themselves not only become the angel investors, they also become the mentors. So I have a lot of trouble with that one. What is the basis of you mentoring somebody else? You haven't even done it yourself yet, right? So Indian system is allowing them to cash out early, long before the company has become viable. I don't want to use names, but and these guys become now spending time on building their own companies. They are investing and mentoring the other entrepreneurs. I think that's a big recipe for disaster.
All right.
So I actually will not point my fingers to the entrepreneurs. I think that the overall ecosystem in India should come up. I will point fingers to the government, to the ecosystem, and everyone else who can actually help Indian startups to actually grow and be successful. I will say that we want to see more and more angel investors from India, like regular people who are not involved in angel investing. They should become angel investors. That will help with a lot of seed investments to happen. I think the government should be proactive in promoting innovation and entrepreneurship. The universities should actually play an important role in having innovation and entrepreneurship as part of the curriculum. So I will point finger more towards the ecosystem and so that it can help the growth.
Anis, one place I will challenge you a bit, if you don't mind, is on the angel investors. I actually think we have too many angel investors in India. And what I mean by that is it's the proportion of angel investors who are not who do not have domain expertise, who do not have operating backgrounds, they have money. And I think sometimes that's been one of the problems because they set a benchmark of valuation that's not sustainable for the company, and it's for the wrong reasons. So that's the only area I would say. The other stuff I would agree with, but I just want to put that.
I appreciate it.
All right. So we're going to try and squeeze in a few questions. So while the panel answers this last question, please line up with questions. Any favorite sort of anecdotes about entrepreneurship in India?
Well, so, I am, before I answer that one, I'm very bullish on India and Indian entrepreneurs. They have come a long ways since I first engaged in 1999. A lot more maturity, a lot better setup. There's a wave of new entrepreneurs which is emerging under this new environment out there. Money is available. They will go through the process. A lot more people need to get their fingers burnt before the environment will mature. Because that's what teaches you a lesson. This thing is too hard. Angel investors are coming with unreal valuations. But on the other hand, I've seen a lot more sanity coming back to market over the last few months. And so on that experience, we had an entrepreneur who was doing extremely well. His company was doubling year on year. He was profitable. He had tons of money in the bank, and he wanted to exit. And I told him, hang around for 2 to 3, 4 more years. This thing will be worth a lot. He said, well, if recession happens, I will lose everything I have already did. You own 70% of the market. You're profitable. You have money in the bank. You have wherewithal to ride through any recession. He sold the company. If he had hung around for 2 to 3 more years, he would have been worth 10 times as much money. So there's this fear set up. Hey, I need to make my money now, otherwise I might lose it. Which wouldn't happen very, very often.
So from my perspective, I think, about a year ago, this young entrepreneur came to me. He had an idea. He had not hired any people. He still was at his regular job. It was an interesting concept. Market was big, but he really hadn't thought it out. And within 20 minutes of the meeting, he asked me if I was ready to invest at a 10 million pre-money valuation. And I said, how can you come up with this valuation? He says, I read the paper every morning. It's what it seems like the range is. And when I said, it's not going to work for us, he literally cut the meeting short. He told me, he says, listen, I got to go because I got 3 other investors who are interested and I'd rather spend time with them. So if you can't make a decision on the spot, I don't want, we're probably not a good fit. And I ran to him 3 weeks ago at an airport. He's still raising money.
I will say something positive, okay? A lot of news is going on. I am a very positive person, and I'm starting my journey in India in a very positive way. So I will ask all the entrepreneurs to build great companies out of India, and we want to see the next Facebook and Google from India, and I'm there to help and work with you.
All right. We're already being booted off, so if you can keep it brief.
Question. Certainly media and entertainment, content consumption is enormous, particularly in India, and growing exponentially. Have any of you been approached and considered and actually invested in content, media and entertainment, and if not, why not?
Yeah, it's not an area where I have any special insights. Evaluations were totally unreal. These as Watton, and with the Bollywood story, and they think they're worth $100 million already, because they have star power. So I have stayed away from that simply because I don't understand enough to, But TV18 did wonderful job for, people, right?
It's hard to monetize content in India. That's one of the challenges we have. Is people don't like to pay too much, right? So at the end of the day, everybody's hungry for content, but how do you monetize it? How do you scale the monetization to a level where you can actually build it? So there are companies that will do it, but it's very selective and very minimal.
In my case, I will tell you that I have invested in a few medias. So we are the largest investors for TiEcon Asia, which is the largest technology media in Asia right now. Our experience, yes, media investments are risky and it's difficult, as they said. I agree with that, but we have seen good success with TiEcon Asia. They have grown exponentially year over year. From the time we invested originally, it was 12 people, now they have 100 plus people, and they're cash flow positive. Because they are growing very exponentially, I think one of the biggest advantage they're having, if they want to open up another segment, it is easy for them because they have already the platform where people are coming and hitting, right? So that's what we're seeing now. They're opening up other segments of business around that platform of TiEcon Asia, and they're looking good success with those new platforms and dimensions.
Thank you.
I want to make one correction. I did personally invest, not our fund, into one of the content companies. There was a company formed to make 10 movies, and they were trying to change the model. And just like Hollywood, you lose all your money. The old saying, how do you make a small fortune in Hollywood? You start with a large one.
Really sorry, guys. We had to rush through this, but we're also trying to make up for some lost time. So we are going to pack up. But applause for the panel, and of course, feel free to try and grab a hold of any of them after. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.